Okay, so you're here with us because you really want to like get to the bottom of things, right? Like get smart, fast cut through all the noise and just grab like the most important takeaways.
Absolutely.
So today we're going like head first into this whole thing that happened recently that kind of like uh, combined the the global spectacle of the FIFA World Cup with this this constant like undercurrent of debate around like past elections.
Right.
You might have heard about these comments from Donald Trump at the White House,
Yeah.
and so we've been looking at like an article from Lamag and a fact check from Pointer, and we're gonna
Yeah.
bring you like all the important stuff from that.
That's right. It all started on March 7th, 2025, at a White House event to basically launch this task force that's dedicated to like the 2026 FIFA World Cup.
Right.
FIFA president Gianni Infantino was there too, and like the initial excitement was all about like the upcoming tournaments, the 2025 Club World Cup, and obviously the main event in 2026.
Yeah.
And everyone was really talking about like the economic benefits that would come from it.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Infantino himself even said, we're talking about billions of dollars here and like potentially hundreds of thousands of jobs.
Exactly.
So like a genuinely happy occasion.
Yeah.
Right? But then the conversation took a turn,
It sure did.
a turn that we've all kind of come to expect.
Yeah.
While he was like reminiscing about the U.S. getting those hosting rights,
Yeah.
during his first term, Trump made some comments that have been like really just totally dissected and interpreted in like so many different ways.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And those comments were pretty direct.
Yeah.
He was talking about the bid process, and Trump said, when we made this, it was made during my first term, and it was so sad because I said, can you imagine I'm not going to be president, and that's too bad? And what happened is they rigged the election, and I became president, so that was a good thing.
Well,
Yeah.
spoken like a true showman.
He knows how to get attention, doesn't he?
Oh, he does.
Especially during a FIFA announcement.
Yeah.
Those words, they definitely grabbed attention.
Okay, so let's like really unpack this specific statement from the Oval Office.
Okay.
But I think it's important to remember that this wasn't like an isolated comment.
Yeah, that's true.
Back in January at a Capital One Arena event, he said something pretty similar.
He did.
He said, it's only because they rigged the election that I'll be your president representing you there.
Huh.
I won't be there. I won't be your president. But then they rigged the election, and now we won. So, we've got these two instances where he's linking a rigged election to him becoming president.
Yeah, and what's really fascinating here is like the immediate online reaction to the Oval Office comments.
Oh, yeah.
The Pointer piece really highlights this. Like almost instantly, social media posts started popping up all over the place suggesting that Trump was actually admitting to rigging the 2024 election.
Oh, wow.
And Pointer points out that these posts got a ton of traction. Like one specific post on X got almost 8 million views in just a few days.
Oh, wow, that's a lot.
So that just shows you how many people were like interpreting it that way right from the get-go.
Oh, absolutely. You can totally see why someone would hear that soundbite and immediately jump to that conclusion.
Yeah.
It's a pretty like explosive idea
It is.
right on the surface.
For sure.
But then when you start to think about like the bigger picture,
Yeah.
all the things he said before, it gets a little bit more complicated.
Exactly. The more common interpretation, and the one that like Pointer's fact check actually backs up with evidence, is that Trump was in his own way talking about the 2020 election.
Okay.
The thinking is this. Trump has always said over and over that the 2020 election was stolen from him.
Right.
His argument seems to be that if that hadn't happened, he would have been in his second term finishing up in 2024.
Right.
And because of that, he wouldn't be president during these upcoming 2025 and 2026 FIFA events.
So in his mind, the rigging that he claims made him president now is actually like his own spin on the 2020 election.
Exactly. It's like a weird twist because it's the opposite of what he usually says about the 2020 election being rigged against him.
So what do you think about that flip?
Well, what's really interesting to me is how this like offhand comment, no matter what he actually meant, reveals how much he still believes the 2020 election was rigged. Even at something like a Happy World Cup announcement, it becomes the way he sees his current position.
Right.
I mean, usually Trump says that the 2020 election was rigged against him, which is why he lost.
Right. Right.
But these newer comments suggest that some kind of rigging happened in his favor, ultimately making him president. At least when it comes to being in office for these upcoming sporting events.
Yeah.
It's a pretty big change from his usual story, and it shows how like flexible his words can be.
Yeah, and the Lamag article also mentions this point. They highlight how different these statements are from his, years-long insistence that the 2020 election was fraudulent and cost him the presidency.
Right.
It really makes you stop and think about what he's really trying to say,
Hmm.
or maybe if there even is a clear message.
And Pointer's fact check goes even deeper into the Oval Office comments by looking at the whole video.
Okay.
They point out that Trump's comments about maybe not being president happened right after FIFA president Infantino was explaining the timeline and all the details about the World Cup happening after Trump's first term ended.
Gotcha.
That context is really important for understanding what he was actually talking about.
Yeah, they even quote the part of Trump's speech right before he said the rigged election comment from the longer video.
Okay.
It starts with, when we made this, it was made during my term, my first term, and it was so sad because I said, can you imagine I'm not going to be president? That's too bad. Hearing that before the other comment definitely makes it seem like he's thinking about when they got the bid and imagining if he wasn't in office now to see it actually happen.
Yeah.
So it's less about admitting to rigging in 2024 and more about a very roundabout way of bringing up 2020 again.
What's crazy is how a short and kind of vague statement can be understood in such different ways, especially these days with how information spreads online.
Oh, yeah.
Like little bits of information can get taken out of context so easily and then blown up online.
Right.
The super fast and widespread reaction on social media is a perfect example of that.
So basically we have Trump making these remarks about a rigged election that's supposedly made him president during an event that was supposed to be about celebrating the upcoming FIFA World Cup.
Right. And there are two main ways people have understood these comments.
Yeah.
First, those early social media reactions showed some people thought he was admitting to rigging the 2024 election to make himself win.
Yeah.
But the second and more evidence-backed interpretation, especially according to Pointer, is that he was continuing his false narrative about the 2020 election being rigged against him.
Okay.
In this interpretation, he's suggesting that the so-called rigging of 2020 is what would have stopped him from being president now.
Yep.
So when he says he became president because of a rigged election, he's kind of saying the opposite of what he usually claims about 2020.
Oh, wow.
Like a double negative situation.
Right.
And Pointer's analysis really focuses on this second interpretation, emphasizing the timing of the 2018 World Cup bid and how it relates to Trump potentially being president in 2026.
Gotcha.
They specifically say that his comments were about the 2020 election and his false claims about it, not an admission of rigging the 2024 election.
This whole situation really shows just how complicated it is to figure out what politicians are really saying right.
It does.
Especially when it comes to really sensitive and debated topics like whether elections are fair.
Absolutely. It makes you think about how the same words can be understood in totally different ways depending on what you already believe, and even just what bits of information you see online.
So for everyone listening, what really stood out to you in these different interpretations? What was your initial reaction to what he meant?
And that brings up a really important point to think about. With all the debates and disagreements about past elections and all the ways these comments have been interpreted, from admitting to current rigging to repeating old complaints, what does this whole thing tell us about the challenges of clear communication and understanding what politicians say in our world of constantly changing information? It's definitely worth considering how different people with their own opinions and knowledge understand these kinds of statements.
Yeah, that's a great point.
It really is.
I think we've given our listeners a lot to chew on today.
I think so too.
So until next time, stay curious and keep diving deep.